Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news coming out of the transfer portal as former five-star quarterback Brock Vandagriff has committed to the Kentucky Wildcats. The former Georgia quarterback, although not necessarily proven at the college football yet, sitting behind a really talented quarterback room in Athens, Georgia, was one of the more heralded quarterbacks coming out of the high school class in that 2021 cycle, doing some digging. And if you are a college football fan that follows the recruiting trail, you recognize the name Brock Vandagriff. Was one of the more talented quarterbacks in that 2021 class. And again, although not necessarily proven at the college football level, we're talking about a kid that threw for over 10,000 yards during his high school career, 107 passing touchdowns, and also added 1,800 rushing yards, 49 touchdowns on the ground. One of the more insane statistics that I've seen from a high school quarterback. Really excited to get into Brock Vandagriff and then talk a little bit about some other targets for the Kentucky Wildcats in the transfer portal. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. As the transfer portal season starts to heat up, we're going to be talking all the roster moves that we see in college football. And for Kentucky fans, I think it looks like Mark Stoops is going to get aggressive in the transfer portal. A few other names that are trending to Kentucky as well that we will talk about. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, the amount of support y'all have shown, it really does mean a lot. It allows me to do what I do, and can't thank you guys enough. So appreciate the support. And without further ado, let's get into Brock Vandagriff and talk about the player that you're getting with Brock Vandagriff. And I think the main criticism that you hear about Brock Vandagriff is he hasn't played at the college football level yet in any significant capacity. And I don't know if that's necessarily a knock on Brock Vandagriff, right? His first 2 years, he was behind Stetson Bennett, who won 2 national championships for the Georgia Bulldogs, and then loses a tightly contested quarterback battle to Carson Beck, who there's buzz that he's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick. We all saw the quarterback Carson Beck was. So you look at Brock Vandagriff, and yes, he hasn't played during his first 3 years of college football in a significant capacity. I don't think that necessarily means he can't play. And again, going back to his high school career, this guy was putting up freakish numbers coming out of the state of Georgia. You take a look at some of the athletic markers as well. One, really big body, 6'3", 210 pounds, has a massive arm. Again, you don't become a five-star quarterback if you are not dripping with arm talent. And then you take a look at the athlete he is, 4'6", 940. I mean, this dude can absolutely fly as well. So you're getting a guy that can make it happen with his legs, extend plays outside of the pocket. And you look at him and projecting him into this Kentucky offense, I think Kentucky fans, and I personally am extremely excited to see what Brock Vandagriff looks like in a Kentucky uniform. We were really excited when Devin Leary came to Kentucky, and I think a lot of Kentucky fans would agree, a little bit of an underwhelming performance for Devin Leary taking that step to SEC football. You're getting a guy in Brock Vandagriff who, for the last 3 years, has gone up in practice against the best defense in the country, and that's the Georgia Bulldogs. So the progression and the step for him going and starting at an SEC school might be a little bit more smooth than Devin Leary. Again, you look at Devin Leary's numbers. I'm not saying he was bad, but I definitely don't think he elevated this offense in any significant way. 56% completion, 2,400 yards, 23 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. When the moments were the brightest, it did seem like Devin Leary did not play his best football. He missed some crucial throws for this Kentucky team. Brock Vandagriff has the ability to make all these throws. I think he has the ability to massively raise the ceiling of this Kentucky offense. And what's even more exciting is you look at the playmakers around the Kentucky Wildcats and around Brock Vandagriff in this offense. Not only do you have Liam Cohen back, who I think is probably one of the better offensive coordinators you see in college football, but you also have a ton of weapons for Brock Vandagriff to get to work with, most notably Barian Brown, who I probably think is one of the, if you were to ask me who's going to be a massive breakout candidate going into his third year of college football in the SEC, it's going to be Barian Brown. You have Dane Keith, who, again, I mean, that's one of the better wide receiver duos that you see in the SEC. Anthony Brown-Steven, like, there is a lot of talent within this Kentucky room that you're really excited about. And I think Brock Vandagriff, is going to have the ability to really put up some massive numbers within this Kentucky offense. Now, I also want to have a conversation on what are some other targets and players that Kentucky could be going after in the transfer portal. You land Brock Vandagriff, which I think is massive in terms of, okay, now you're trying to recruit some other offensive skill to come to Lexington. You're selling that you have one of the more talented quarterbacks in the country, and that's exactly what Brock Vandagriff is. It doesn't really matter that he hasn't played much in his first 3 seasons. This dude is dripping with the arm talent and significantly raises the ceiling of what this Kentucky offense can be. Another target that is trending to the Kentucky Wildcats is former 4-star wide receiver Raymond Katrell, who spent 1 year at Texas A&M, did not necessarily play much, but similar to Brock Vandagriff, this is a guy that's extremely exciting. Going into his second year of college football, provides a little bit of a different flavor than a guy like Baron Brown, right? Baron Brown, one of the more electrifying wide receivers in the SEC in terms of the speed that he has. Raymond Katrell, 6'3", 215 pounds, a massive physical presence on the boundary. Taking a visit to Kentucky this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a commitment from Raymond Katrell in the next 48 hours. You get Brock Vandagriff, a little bit momentum on the transfer portal recruiting trail. Raymond Katrell would be a massive get for the Kentucky Wildcats in terms of that true boundary physical presence on the outside. Now, looking at this Kentucky team and taking a look at some other pieces that they might want to go address in the transfer portal, I'm going to go to the running back position. And this is going to be a big swing, but I think Kentucky, I don't think there's a reason to think Kentucky couldn't pull this off. You saw all the success Ray Davis had transferring in from Vanderbilt. Let's go within the SEC and take a look at running back Rocket Sanders, who at Arkansas, when healthy, when this Arkansas team had an offensive line, was one of the best running backs, not only in the conference, but in the entire country. And in 2023, he was banged up. The offensive line was a disaster for Arkansas. He hits the transfer portal after being a guy that probably goes day 2 in the NFL draft. In the transfer portal, you're looking for an offense that's going to give you a lot of work, give you the ability to kind of be, there were talks about Ray Davis being a Heisman frontrunner at times during their season. You look at Rocket Sanders, he's looking at Kentucky saying, this would make a lot of sense. And what do you want in Kentucky in a running back? You want a bruiser. You want a physical running back. Not many more for physical running backs than Rocket Sanders, sitting at 6'2", 240 pounds, who also runs a sub-1100 meter dash time. This dude has the burners to hit the big play. He has the physicality to run between the tackles. One of the more talented running backs, one of the more high upside running backs that's available in the transfer portal. And if you want to go add a body in that running back room, Rocket Sanders would make a ton of sense. Next guy I want to talk about, in this offensive line, I thought took some massive steps from what it was in 2022. And I'm not necessarily saying this Kentucky offensive line was elite in 2023, but it got a lot better than it was in 2022. You want to replace some guys, you're going to lose some guys in terms of eligibility. Why don't you go look at a guy in Zeke Correll who's going into his 5th year of college football from the state of Ohio. That is where Mark Stoops makes his money on the recruiting trail, and an immediate plug-and-play guy on the inside. And what I love about Zeke Correll is he's a 3-year starter at Notre Dame, so played a high level of Power 5 football and has played at a high level as well. And so you look at Zeke Correll, can play center, can play guard. You bring him in. He gives you a versatility in terms of that inside of the offensive line. He also gives you a high upside guy that is you feel good about coming in and playing right away and being really solid. Last year started all 12 games, or actually 10 games, and you only allowed 16 pressures. You feeling really good about Zeke Correll kind of plug and playing on that inside of the offensive line. The last position group that I'm looking at if I'm Kentucky, and there's going to be a couple different position groups that Mark Stoops is targeting in the transfer portal, going to go to the secondary. This is a defense that historically has been really good in the back end under Mark Stoops, and he normally figures it out in the back end. It wasn't great this year, right? Giving up a 67% completion percentage. That was 126th in the FBS. You want to get some cover corners who are just extremely sticky and kind of going to lower that completion percentage a little bit. This guy, Western Kentucky and Upton Stout, that has played phenomenal football the last 2 years at Western Kentucky. Spent 2 years at North Texas, 2 years at Western Kentucky. In his last 2 years, 10 passes defended, 5 interceptions. A guy like Upton Stout would immediately make this secondary better for Kentucky. And I think at the end of the day, going back to Brock Vandagriff and talking about him, you look at this Kentucky team that maybe had underperformed a little bit in terms of preseason expectations. If you shore up that quarterback play, I think this team is winning probably 2 more games than they did last year. And so if you're a Kentucky fan, bringing in Brock Vandagriff, and if he hits and kind of reaches that potential and the talent level that he has, this is a Kentucky team that's going to be dangerous in the SEC, a team that I'm excited to follow in the transfer portal. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. hopefully more to come for the Kentucky Wildcats in the transfer portal. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.